Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of Luke's Gospel. And we're going to take one more session to introduce Luke's Gospel this morning. We've asked the question, who is Luke? And we talked about his identity and what is a gospel. Today we want to talk about how Luke's Gospel is different. It is one of the synoptics, like Matthew and Mark. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the synoptic gospels, and so they're going to follow a similar pattern. There's a great deal of content that is identical in all three gospels, but Luke's is different, as each gospel is different. Mark's gospel is clearly either the script of or the transcript of spoken language. The preaching, it is a preaching gospel, and for a Gentile audience primarily. Matthew's gospel, so formally Jewish, so clear in demonstrating point by point how Jesus fulfills every Old Testament prophecy. Those things are in Luke as well. But Luke's gospel is for a Gentile audience and perhaps for an audience that have not yet decided to become disciples. In fact, Luke acts as a document. If they existed originally as two documents that were connected because they're both written to the same person, Theophilus. We'll talk about him in just a second. It might be written in connection with Paul's imprisonment, and perhaps to explain Christianity to someone who was kindly to Christians, who reacted kindly to Christians, but who was not yet a Christian. At the end of Acts, we have Paul under house arrest. It's kind of an open end. And that has led some historians to think that this was written almost as an amicus brief, um, something to take to court to show the judge so that you will know who we are and what our story is and what this is about. It could very well be exactly that. We know from Paul's writings to Philippians, to the Philippians in the first chapter, that he has reached people who are in the Praetorian Guard. And we also know from the prison epistles that Luke is there when this happens. There is Agrippa, whose home is Rome. Paul met him in Caesarea, but he lives in Rome. And Agrippa, this may be something sent to him. I don't know, but it very well could be, because the phrase Theophilus, as we will learn next time, is not a nickname and probably not even a name. It's an honorific. Someone in power is wearing that name, and we'll talk about what that name means more. We'll talk more about that next time. Next time, we're going to talk about the introduction, and we can't go into that now. But verses 1 through 4 of Luke chapter 1 are considered the most polished Greek, not just in the New Testament, perhaps of the first century. Um, Luke's Luke's skill as a writer and as a historian have been compared, and only compared, to Thucydides. They are the two giants of historical research in the ancient world. Thucydides would have been writing 400 years or so earlier during the Peloponnesian War, but they are the only two among the ancient historians, all the great names. They are the only two. Not Tacitus, not Herodotus, not Suetonius. They are the only two who do their research, follow up their sources, and give you the account without editorializing. They do. And Luke does that. And yet, at the same time, he's able to present the truth of the gospel. We already said that Luke gives us Roman names for things, gives us the accurate account of the names and the actual titles of Roman officials, um, and we don't find that in any other gospel. Um, it is it is it contains scientific information, um, details that a physician's eye might see. People have made more of this perhaps in the past than ought to be made of it, but there are times, maybe not as many times as some people who go looking for things find. But there are times, particularly in the Garden of Gethsemane, where we get actual medical detail or medical terminology that you get nowhere else. It is from Luke's gospel that we know that Jesus was sweating blood. I mean, he gives us that detail. Nobody else gives us that detail. He has to explain Jewish customs and Jewish terminology to his reader. So, he probably wouldn't have to do that with Agrippa, of course, but whoever his reader is not a Jew, not in any way. And because of the respect he receives as a historian, he gives us so much cultural content that we don't have from any other historical source. We have the oldest eyewitness account, the oldest written eyewitness account of a shipwreck in all of human literature in the book of Acts. Did you know that? The Bible contains the oldest numerical assignation for pi in all of human history, 3, and it gives us the oldest eyewitness account of a shipwreck. And so there's a lot of nautical detail in the shipwreck in Acts. We get things like that from Luke that we don't get anywhere else, because he is such a meticulous historian, and because he is such a fine stylist. He alludes to, uses phrases from, quotes from a number of Greek and Roman sources, and I've got just a small list here. Aesop, Epimenides, Euripides, Plato, Thucydides, Aratus, and Menander are the ones that are generally cited. There may be others, but that's pretty important. Um, and so his account is unique because he has a unique audience. This Theophilus. We'll talk more about him tomorrow when we look at the introduction. But Luke's gospel is not like any other gospel. People have asked, do you have a favorite gospel? And sometimes I've said John, but I don't. My favorite gospel is the one I'm reading. And I hope that you're always reading in a gospel. I hope that in addition to your other study, you spend time in the gospels every day. They're each unique to their own purpose, and they each feed us in different ways. And Luke feeds us in a way Mark, John, and Matthew do not. And I just love spending time in his gospel. Okay, well, we're going to pick up with the text next time, and we're going to look at chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. We don't have really the time to give due to any of these passages because he's such a brilliant writer, stylist, and historian that there's more in any 4 verses to talk about than we can talk about in 5 or 10 minutes. But we'll do our best. We'll talk to you next time, and we're in chapter 1, verse 1. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.